In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a cedar sandbox for about $30 with minimal cuts, something that you can make in an afternoon. Hi guys, my name is Anna White, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make this sandbox. My daughter is almost 2 years old and she's been wanting a sandbox really bad. She's been playing in the gravel. So we decided to make her a sandbox, but I didn't want to spend hundreds of dollars on one because I know it's a toy that they're only going to play with for about 5 years. I didn't want to invest in a plastic sandbox because in about 5 years it would end up in a landfill. But I did want it to be cedar because cedar is naturally rot resistant, and it has a strong smell to it that can discourage spiders and other insects from being in the sandbox. So I came up with a way of using cedar fence pickets to build the sandbox, so it costs only about $30. This is a super simple build. You only have to make a few cuts. Here's how I made it. To build this project, you're going to need 1 2x4, 10 cedar fence pickets, some 1 1/4" screws, a power sander, a saw, and a drill. So the cedar fence pickets were about $2 a board, which is a significant savings, but I had to go ahead and sand each and every board down to make sure there was no splinters. So this was definitely the most time-consuming part of the project. If you had a belt sander, that would definitely make things faster, or you could buy just basic 1x6 boards off the shelf, but the price is going to go up by about 5 times as much. The only cuts you're going to need to make are on the 2x4, and you're basically just going to take that 1 2x4 and chunk it up into 8 pieces that are 11 inches long. You can use a compound miter saw, a chop saw, or a circular saw like I'm doing. It should be pretty quick just to make production cuts. On this last cut, I was just left with a little bit of the board left, so I went ahead and flipped it around so that the larger part of the board is clamped to the table and the smaller part falls to the ground. Just gives me a little bit more room to clamp to. Okay, so I didn't need to cut any of those cedar fence pickets because they all come in a standard 72-inch length, and I'm just going to start assembly. So just laying the cedar fence pickets on top of 2 of the 2x4s. And just taking a little bit of time to make sure everything's square and it looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and screw those cedar fence pickets to the back side of the 2x4s using the 1 1/4" self-tapping screws. Sorry about the hair. I haven't had a hair appointment in several months and it's getting quite long. So I just didn't realize it was that crazy. You just need 2 screws here, and I'm using these self-tapping screws and they drive very easy into the wood. Now you want to do a good job and make sure that everything lines up, and you know, these boards, wood isn't perfect, so just kind of making it all work together, making sure all the outside edges are flush on the 2x4s. I made 2 identical sides with the full-length cedar fence pickets and a 2x4 on each end. All right, now it's time to start tying everything together. So you'll need a good sized space because this sandbox is actually quite large when it's done. So you'll need about 8 by 8 to work on the floor. Now note that your garage floor is probably not going to be level, so just be paying attention to this as you attach your board, and make sure that your cedar fence pickets line up with the corresponding cedar fence pickets to make sure it's square all the way around. And I'm just using 2 1 1/4" screws per joint on each end. Then I'm just going to go ahead and repeat those same steps on the other side to complete the basic shape of the sandbox. So if you couldn't find the straight edged cedar fence pickets like I'm using, you can purchase dog-eared ones. Just make sure that you cut the dog-eared part off and make sure all 10 of the cedar fence pickets are exactly the same length. So there is the sandbox, but there's no structure to it at this point. It's not strong enough to last. So I am going to add the additional 2x4s right now to create a little bit more structure and keep those cedar fence pickets from separating in the middle. So the first set of 2x4s, I'll add it onto the ends, and I'm using my square to make sure that everything is attached square. A little trick is you can also use your square to line out where you want your screw holes placed. My garage floor again was uneven, so I'm just doing a little bit of convincing on the wood to get it to do what I want. Okay, so it's looking good, but we still need some sort of structure to keep the project square, and I felt like having a board on top like this would give it a little shelf or even a bench seat, so you know, my kids could set their toys on top of it or even sit on top of it while they're playing and put their feet in the sand. So this board on top actually provides a lot of rigidness to the project, and I think it looks really great. All right, one last step. We have two 2x4 pieces that are left. I'm just going to add those on the long runs that have nothing, just to tie in the rows of cedar fence pickets so they don't separate out in the future. I just found the center, lined it up with the center of the 2x4, squared it up with my speed square, threw some screws in it. Super simple. Now, after you get done constructing, I recommend taking a second to sand the top edges really well so that we prevent splinters from going in our little ones' hands, and just doing that final little extra step to make it really nice. This project really is a very quick and very easy project that you can tackle in definitely an afternoon. It really helps that there's minimal cutting and everything just works out. And there's really no scraps left over to deal with either. It turned out fantastic. I'm going to warn you though, it is a very big sandbox. So for a sealant, I'm using this penetrating stain and sealant in 1. And why I'm using it is just to make it last longer, and then also to match the existing woodwork that we have on our house. And then outside, we just put it in place, and we put some landscaping fabric to keep the sand from leaching out from underneath the sandbox, but it still drains water, and then just filling it up with sand. Okay guys, the sandbox is all done and the kids are loving it. It is a good size, so 3 kids can easily play in it. It did take quite a bit of sand, so just be warned, but you don't necessarily have to fill it all the way to the top. It turned out really sturdy for how inexpensive it was. Like, I can definitely sit on this edge and it's totally fine. I do like this penetrating stain and sealer in 1 because it's not, without getting too technical, it's not film forming, so you don't end up with like a film crust on top. So as your wood expands and contracts, it's not going to cause that to crack. Instead, it's just a stain that's soaked into the oil, and you never have to refinish it. If it starts looking a little faded, you can just wipe on a coat right over top, so very low maintenance. The project all in all cost about $30, which I think is amazing for a 6x6 sandbox made of cedar. So a bargain, and the best part is when kids get too old for it, I'm not contributing a giant plastic sandbox to a landfill, and I didn't waste a lot of money, so I didn't spend hundreds of dollars on a sandbox that they outgrew. So the plans are linked in the description. If you like this project, please leave a comment and let us know and share it. And if you build it, send us in a photo because we love seeing how your projects turn out too. Thanks so much for watching this week. We'll see you next Monday.